Hello, my name is Patrick Usher and I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, POTS Syndrome, what it really is and why it happens. In this video I just want to outline what you'll find on the channel and give you a little bit of background information as to why it came about. So it's now February 2017 and approximately 2 years ago, in fact exactly 2 years ago, I was very unwell with what turned out to be POTS syndrome. I had been unwell for a period before that, but not to the extent that I was 2 years ago, when life became really very dark and scary, it must be said. At that time, I set about looking at different ways I might be able to recover, and I stumbled across a program which at first I was, very, very skeptical about, and that program's name is the Dynamic Neural Retraining System, now also known as the DNRS, and I ordered that program because it had some case studies on it of people who'd had POTS much more severely than I did, and I mean much more severely, and yet they seemed to have made recoveries. And I also ordered it because the DNRS program, was developed for a range of conditions, including chemical sensitivity, a condition where your brain picks up chemicals as being more powerful than they really are, and those chemicals actually have a noxious or poisonous effect on you, which is very, very real and dangerous. And I had started to become 2 years ago. Also, I started to become noticeably chemically sensitive. So I wondered if there was some kind of overlap. Indeed, it's worth noticing, just as an aside, that the person who developed the DNRS program, Annie Hopper, she actually didn't have POTS, but she had chemical sensitivity, and her program, she later found that it worked for people with both chemical sensitivity and POTS. They recovered from both by following the program, which points to some kind of similar, if not exactly the same, neurological origin. And I say neurological because this program is aimed at changing the brain. It is a brain rewiring program, very intensive, requires a lot of repetition, a lot of exercises, a lot of discipline. But it is aimed at changing brain function, and it's aimed at changing the part of the brain known as the limbic system. The limbic system being the primitive and automatic, largely, part of the brain which is responsible for our flight, fight or freeze mechanism, and it is also, very interestingly, the start of the autonomic nervous system. And as you know, if you are watching this and you have POTS at this moment in time, or you have a loved one with POTS, you will know that POTS syndrome is also classified as a form of dysautonomia. So it's very interesting that the limbic system, which is where the autonomic nervous system starts, it was very interesting to me at the time and gave me hope that there could be some, therefore, rather direct link between limbic system function and autonomic nervous system function. So I ordered the program back then, didn't start it immediately. I started a couple of months after I ordered it, and I started in mid-May of 2015. And within a week I was feeling noticeably better. Within 3 weeks, although I was still weak and had a long way to go, my condition had stabilized. I'd have energy crashes and so on, but it wasn't like I woke up in fear as to what my day was going to be like. And then within 2 months I took a flight, and within, I'd say, 4 or 5 months I was basically fine. My heart rates were consistently below 100. Occasionally they'd rise to 110, but that's actually normal depending on what time of day it is and what you've been doing. But usually they were under 100, they were in the 70s or 80s or early 90s, whereas before they would have consistently been 120, 130 or even 140 beats per minute upon standing. So I had that. Not only was I feeling so much better, but also there was the objective evidence that things had changed. So obviously this felt like a miracle to me, given where I was starting from. Although I was determined 2 years ago to get better, I had absolutely no clue in hell, to put it that way, how on earth that was going to happen. But it did happen, and during this process of recovery and afterwards, I started to ask myself, why is this working? Why is a program that targets an impaired limbic system in the brain, why is that working for this condition? And I started to read a lot of literature on POTS, which is not a delightful topic, as anyone who has it and reads about it will know. But I started to read a lot on it, and kind of what I found was, I think, is that the idea of a physical impairment in the limbic system can explain pretty much all, and I mean all. Like maybe one or two things not, but 80% of things it can explain in ways that I think are quite obvious when you think about it. It can explain all the pre-existing findings, scientific findings into POTS. So in particular, I am thinking of, I won't go into the details here, it's elsewhere on the channel, I have the details, but net protein deficiency, a massive problem as that can be observed in all POTS patients, which is directly responsible for the inability of the POTS patient's blood vessels to constrict upon standing, can be potentially explained by limbic system impairment as a knock-on effect of it. Mast cell activation problems, for those who have them, can potentially be explained, as can low blood volume as a result of poor sodium retention, as a result of problems in the aldosterone angiotensin, renin-angiotensin network. So all of those things I believe can be explained, and many more things besides. So, including overlapping conditions such as irritable bowel, chronic fatigue, etc., fibromyalgia, all conditions which the DNRS also has been shown, not been shown yet, I'll talk about that in a moment, but anecdotally speaking, has been shown to be pretty strong and effective treatment for. So having kind of made those connections, and despite the fact that, to be honest, I hate everything to do with POTS, and even now, 2 years later, when people mention POTS to me, they think this is a perfectly innocent term. They think they're talking about teapots or jam pots, but to me, it's just like, please don't mention this. It gives me a nervous twitch even now. But anyway, so despite that neurosis of mine, I set about putting together this channel and the main talk, and also a book, which is basically what the YouTube talk, the hour-long talk on this channel summarizes. So the book and the YouTube talk are both called POTS Syndrome, What It Really Is and Why It Happens, and that talk really is the first thing to watch on this channel. So you'll see it if you go to the main channel page. That is the thing to watch and to consider. And basically, it has the most important points that are in the book. I'd just like to make a little comment on the book. The book isn't published yet. Okay, it's now late-ish February 2017. I'm hopeful it'll be published before May. So not entirely sure, basically, is my point on that. But we shall see. Certainly I would hope before midsummer, but anyway, fingers crossed it'll be done quite soon. A lot of it's ready to go. I'm just awaiting some final contributions to it. But I thought basically, why not just get on with it, is my feeling, and present these ideas now in this form, in YouTube form now. What's the point in waiting? It might as well be that people just can start thinking about these things now. And if you're looking around for treatment options for POTS, I don't want people to have to wait a few months longer. If they have come across the dynamic neural retraining system and they're wondering, well, that looks interesting, and some people have clearly recovered from POTS using it, but why have they recovered? That's the gap I'm trying to fill, is why? Why does it work? So I thought, let's just get the ideas out here now, and people can think about it. And I really hope that these ideas. I'll just say that whenever the book is announced, I'll have a little video on the channel announcing it. But I really hope that these ideas do reach a large swathe of people with POTS syndrome or their loved ones who are considering treatment options for them to consider. So that's my firm hope for the channel. And I also hope that this channel may be something of interest to medical researchers, the channel, the talk and the book, because, basically, as far as I'm concerned, this material is free for anyone to use in a medical context. If they think there's any merit in the conclusions put forward, basically as long as acknowledgement is given, these ideas can be taken as starting points to be refined and tested in any context as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not wedded to them personally like that, so as long as there's acknowledgement, that's fine. So any medical researcher who stumbles across this and is interested in exploring these ideas further, go ahead. So that's that, and there may be, although I don't know the exact details yet, and if I do get the exact details, I'll make a little video about it. There's a cat on that roof. I'll make a video about it, because I don't think the details have been finalised yet. But it may actually be the case that there will be a big study quite soon into the efficacy of the dynamic neural retraining system for POTS syndrome amongst other conditions. Now, as I say, I don't have the full details on that yet, but it's very, very exciting development. And if the thesis I'm putting forward can in any way inform that in a way that is helpful, then that's absolutely fine by me. So just want to make that point. So that's very, very exciting news. And so in some ways that takes pressure off whatever I'm doing, because if that goes ahead, then it'll be clear one way or t'other whether or not limbic system impairment may indeed be the root cause of POTS. And I should say that I'm not wedded to this idea. If scientific research shows that it isn't, and the dynamic neural retraining system just works because of placebo, then fine. But I don't think it is placebo. I really, really don't, because first of all, it didn't feel like it. The dynamic neural retraining system is so clever and so targeted, and the way the exercises you're doing felt it was so targeting the root problem that it just didn't feel like placebo. And the way in which one recovered in this sort of felt like quasi-miraculous way, although I don't think it was, I think there was a very good reason for it, that is not a kind of placebo thing. And when you look at other people who've recovered from the much worse positions than I was in, like far worse, so people who hadn't been able to stand up in a year, like I could stand up, still, and they've made recoveries, then again, you look at where they've been at and where they've got to, it can't just be a placebo. So I think that there's definitely targeting the root cause, and it just makes sense in terms of the dysautonomia, limbic system being the start of the autonomic nervous system. It makes sense that at last, if one takes into account the idea of a limbic system impairment, at last there is an explanation for why it is that there's usually a preceding trauma which triggers the condition, where trauma is understood broadly, very broadly, to include physical traumas such as illnesses like viruses, Lyme disease, any kind of illness really, or other physical traumas like surgery, pregnancy, and even in some cases psychological traumas, or a combination of all of them, or some of them. It's well known, everyone agrees, all the researchers know that this happens, there's always a trigger. But which part of us is affected by traumas? Which part, if not the brain? The brain and the limbic system is what perceives what happens to you. It is what is reading all the sensory information in your body and from the outside world. So it's the part of you that is affected by trauma. So it just makes total sense that if something awful happens to you, the brain may tip over into crisis, and the part of the brain that will be affected will be the limbic system. So that again makes sense. So I really do think this points to the root cause. I'm absolutely certain of it. Now, having said that, I am not a medical researcher, I'm not a medical scientist, etc., etc. So I'm putting forward these ideas in good faith. as someone who had the condition, recovered, and then wondered why this brain rewiring program had worked. But I'm well aware that, you know, some of the things I say, scientifically speaking, could be wrong. Okay, they could be very wrong, for all I know. And, you know, science at some point may show other things to be the case, or other nuances to be the case, or whatever. But basically my point is, I'm not wedded to what I'm saying. I put it forward with, you know, with a degree of certainty, because that's only appropriate, but I'm not, you know, this is not the be all and end all for me. I'm just putting this idea out there for hopefully for people to consider the DNRS as a treatment modality for them. And I wish anyone who does go on to take the DNRS as a result of these videos, you know, I wish you every best wish in the world in your in that process. Another thing to mention, well, just in relation to the last point, is of course, you know, my disclaimer. Please, you know, I put these ideas forward in good faith, but if they are in any way convincing and you do decide to go ahead and try the DNRS, do consult your doctor or your POTS consultant first. Always seek medical advice. That really goes without saying, but I say it anyway. And the other thing to say, just to be clear about, is that in making the recommendation to follow the DNRS, I do not gain financially from that company in any way. I am not affiliated with them. I'm simply, as I say, someone who followed their program. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread, but you know, I followed the program, I got better, and I'm just sharing that with people. So those are the things I want to say in welcoming you to my channel. As I say, the main thing is the hour-long video. Do settle down and watch that. There are also other videos on the channel for you to consider on various other aspects of the theory I'm putting forward that aren't addressed so much in the main talk, or which do address the issues in the main talk but from a different angle, so you can see those videos as well. Sorry, the sound isn't so good in those videos as it is in this one, because I have a microphone now that's very, very good, but it's not so good in those other videos. But you know, hopefully you'll still hear what I'm saying. That's all I want to say about that. A warm welcome to the channel. If it is your first time, do settle down and watch the main video. And yeah, thank you for stopping by.